Hey guys, it's Megan. Welcome back to another video. We're back in the library today to talk about the books that I read in August. And yes, we're halfway through September. I realize this now. So in the month of August, I read 6 books and I DNF'd 4 other books. But really one of those books I'm going to count as having read because I read like 80, was it 80? I read a lot. 73% of a book that was 622 pages. So I'm basically going to count that as I read another book. So it's basically like I read 7 books. So let's go through the books that I DNF'd first. And the first one is actually pretty shocking. It is Cersei by Madeline Miller. I DNF'd this very, very early on. In fact, it was at 18%. So this book was really boring and not at all what I thought it was going to be. I feel like it's for people who don't really know that much maybe about Greek mythology. And it was more just like an overview of trying to like throw in a whole bunch of stuff. And it was not interesting at all. Nothing, the characters, the plot, the setting, like somehow they made Greek mythology boring. I don't even know how it's possible. So anyway, I DNF'd Cersei and I don't even know that I'm gonna give this author another chance just because this was so bad. And then it's the book that I'm basically going to count as having read, which is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Ermentrout. Now I made a list, which I didn't make a video about. I was gonna make a list of like 5-star predictions and see how I did, which I still wanna do that video, but this was going to be on it because it was going to be a 5-star prediction because I thought it was sort of supernatural. It turns out, yeah, there's sort of like vampires in it, and it was a romance, and I was like, oh, this just looks so cool. The title's awesome. I think I'm going to love it. I was going to give it 5 stars. I have to say, this might be the worst book I have ever read. This is it. I honestly cannot think of a book that is worse. Why did I read 73% of a 622-page book, you ask? I'm asking myself that question, but I think it was because the first part of the book, I still had hope. And then it was like, well, I've committed so long to it that I've got to see what happens just because I've committed so long, and surely something is going to happen because it was like the most slow moving, dull plot ever. But the writing got so bad. I kid you not, this is some of the worst writing I've ever seen. I could write better than this. I have absolutely no doubt. I usually don't say that because I'm like, I know my writing's not that great. I wrote a book in college. It's not that good. I know this, but anyone I think could write a book better than this. So I DNF'd it at 73%, mostly because at this point I could see that really nothing was going to happen and the writing was just so incredibly bad. So Liene from Liene's Library, her channel, she has a video analyzing it, which I will link down below, and like a reading vlog of her reading it, and it is priceless because she says all the things that I found wrong with it basically, but in a really comical way. So you should totally go check out her video if you want to see her rant about this book. So the next book that I DNF'd was Wayward Son by Rainbow Rowell. I read in the month of July. Well, I was like, what month comes before August? I read Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, and we know that I loved it, which for me was very rare to love like a realistic fiction kind of romance novel, but I loved it. And then this month, which you're going to see in just a minute, I read Carry On, which was basically the Fangirl story. Like it was the story from Fangirl, the fan fiction that she wrote. And it was kind of like basically a Harry Potter fanfic is really what it was. And I'll tell you about that one later. I did enjoy it, so I thought I was gonna love to continue on with Wayward Son. However, this is like it's like if Harry Potter and Ron and Hermione all left Hogwarts, and once they were done, they went off into the real world and did real world stuff without it really mattering about the magic part of it. So, and maybe it got more like magical later on, but so far it had not. In fact, look, this book has never once been checked out in our library. So I think I'll promote the first one for sure, but we don't even have the third one. There's a third one now in this series, and I'm not even gonna order it because nobody's checking out the second one. But yeah, they go to the American West, but it says they find trouble, dragons, vampires, skunk-headed things with shotguns. I didn't get to that part, but I was bored. It was just realistic fiction instead of Harry Potter, and that's what I wanted, so I DNF'd it. The last book I DNF'd, I gave hardly any chance at all, and that was The Roughest Draft. I read this because I didn't like Book Lovers. I DNF'd it, and I thought maybe this will be better than Book Lovers because apparently I just want a book about romance that has to do with people that are writers or love books. And I loved that little YA novel called Last Chance Books. So I thought, okay, well, there's hope. Maybe this one will be another really good one. And this was written by a husband and wife team. I DNF'd this book at 6%. That is epic for me. I mean, I made it through 73% of From Blood and Ash, for crying out loud. But I DNF'd this at 6% because it was just, I could see where it was going. I could see exactly what was gonna happen. So why would I wanna read it, I guess, because I already could see where it was going. Anyway, DNF'd it, 6%. maybe I'm just gonna give up on book romances for a while. Okay, let's talk about the books I actually did read in August, and I lied. It was not in July that I read Fangirl. It was right now, so you didn't even know I've read this, but I read Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, which is actually quite long for just a young adult realistic fiction novel. And you know, there's quite a few words per page even. But anyway, this was really, really good. It's basically about a girl that writes Harry Potter fan fiction, and she goes off to college, which I loved that setting. Instead of it being during high school, it was during her, you know, freshman year of college, and she makes kind of friends with her very odd roommate and her roommate's, what she thinks is her roommate's boyfriend, but turns out it's like sort of her ex-boyfriend. They're just friends now. And then she makes friends with a guy in her writing class, like a creative writing type class, and she writes stories with him. And let's just say the romance does not go where you think it's going to, and I think that's why I liked it. It's so realistic. It was so well written. I would definitely try reading more from this author because it was really, really good. Oh, and she's a twin, by the way. And their names, because it was going to be like, they thought the parents thought she was just going to have like one child. So it was going to be, her name was going to be Catherine. But since they realized it was twins, they named one Kath and one Ren. So her name was Kath, like C-A-T-H. and her twin sister's name is Ren. And her twin sister has some issues, and she's not getting along with her that well at college because her sister's all into like partying and having a lot of friends and very social. And this girl has lots of anxiety. It's a lot about her anxiety and stuff as well. So anyway, super well written. I loved it. Sort of a realistic romance basically. And yeah, I would definitely read from this author again. Gave it 4 stars, by the way. Then I have some bad news. I read The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin, and I had read the Broken Earth, you know, I'm reading the Broken Earth trilogy, obviously. And what's the first one? The 5th season, there we go. I read the 5th season last month, loved it. I think I gave it like 4.5 stars. It was just a little weird, but other than that, it was great. The writing was wonderful. It was so unique, very sci-fi and fantasy mixed together, which I really liked because it's set in like this so far distant future. I feel like everyone knows what this book's about, so I'm not gonna go through that, but I just wanna say that I read the second one and it's not as good as the first one. I gave it 3 stars, and I had hopes that maybe it just suffered from middle book syndrome and the plot just kind of slowed down. There wasn't really anything as unique as there was in the first one, so I had really high hopes for the third one. Then I read The Stone Sky. I did, at least I powered through, at least I finished it. Maybe that was part of the problem, is that I read them all back to back to back, but I was afraid that if I didn't, that I would forget everything that was happening, because the world is really complex, and I would totally forget like some of the magic system, just the world building, the history, the character names are odd. Like, I was so afraid I would forget it, so I thought I'll just power through and read it. Honestly, I wish I hadn't. So if you read this trilogy, I highly recommend just reading book 1 and stopping there. So book 3, The Stone Sky, I wound up giving just 2.5 stars, and yeah, I would just stop at book 1 if I were you. And next is another disappointment. It is one of my most highly anticipated books of the year, and that was Gallant by V.E. Schwab. So we all know I sort of have this strange relationship with V.E. Schwab, because I absolutely loved A Darker Shade of Magic, the first book in the Shades of Magic trilogy, and the second 2 I hated, especially the second one. I also really, really love the vicious, vengeful, like villains duology. Love it so much. Some of my favorite books now of all time. I even made my husband read them, and he actually enjoyed them as well. But this book was more young adult, whereas the other ones are adult. And I did not find anything really interesting about this book. It's just sort of atmospheric and creepy. I guess it's more about the atmosphere, the school setting, just the potential that there could be something creepy lurking out there. Honestly, it wasn't very creepy. I think I thought it was supposed to be scarier than it was, and it wasn't. The main character is, oh gosh, you know, so it's been so long since I've read it, I kind of forgot. Blind? Deaf? Wait. Deaf. Yeah, there we go. That's what it is. At least partially. So that was at least an interesting, unique main character's kind of perspective that we don't usually see. Or no, maybe not deaf. Maybe she's mute. Oh my gosh, you know, I just don't remember. It's been a hot minute since I read this book. But anyway, nothing super exciting. It kind of reminded me of Catherine House, which I also did not give very many stars, like 2 or 2.5, just because not much actually really happened, and it was more just sort of about the atmosphere. So anyway, I very much have apparently a love-hate relationship with V.E. Schwab, or just a love-mediocre relationship. Okay, 2 final books. So I did read Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. I already told you about this. This book is long, but this is the fan fiction that the main character wrote in the book Fangirl, because in the book Fangirl, she talks about, oh, I'm writing a story called Carry On, and like it's really popular. She's got a lot of people that read it, and everybody's always waiting on the next chapter. And so this is that story. So in our library, this one's in our fantasy section, whereas whereas Fangirl, of course, is in our realistic fiction section, which it could even be in romance now that I think about it. But anyway, this is basically Harry Potter fan fiction if Harry Potter had to live in the same dorm room, you know, and actually share a room with Draco Malfoy, who is also a vampire. This is also if this was like I think their next to last year of school, or maybe their very last year of school. Like they go like 8 years to this school. It's not Hogwarts. It's called, Watford. Yeah, it's called Watford, but it's basically Hogwarts. So, you know, it just jumps right into it. It doesn't give us all the background. It just assumes that we know what a magical school is like, and just jumps right into like their final year and their last battle with the Voldemort type figure. So anyway, I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. The final book I read this month is the most surprising and will probably be my most surprising book this year. This is a book that I gave 5 stars to a young adult thriller. Never would I have expected this, and it was amazing, and I recommend that everyone read this if you want a thriller, especially if you want it to be more adult, even though it's listed as young adult. That is I Hunt Killers by Barry Lyga. I thought the title was silly. You know, I didn't really care for the cover. It's like, oh, this guy's gonna hunt a serial killer and his dad was a serial killer. Okay. Like, I just wasn't really that intrigued, but the writing was so good. This is my second book I've read by Barry Lyga. I also read The Hive, which was kind of about like social media. It's more of a sci-fi book, and I really enjoyed it, and I apparently like this man's writing style. It's really, really good. It's actually told in it's third person point of view, which I did like, and it's past tense, which I did like. I'm not a fan of like present tense, first person point of view kind of stories. So anyway, it's amazing. I highly recommend. It's not just a boy solving a mystery. Like, there's way more. It's really more about him and his struggles with the fact that his dad was a serial killer, like apparently one of the most notorious ever. He killed over 100 people, and he kind of taught him the ways of being a serial killer, and so he's trying to make sure that he doesn't turn into that. So it's really a lot about his own internal struggle, as well as him trying to help catch a new serial killer who is a kind of a copycat of his dad, who is locked up in prison but wants to escape. There are 2 sequels to this. It is a trilogy. For me, apparently this is what I'm saying about most books. I would just stop at this one. You could really read, this one's a whole story by itself. Yes, it does kind of leave off on a cliffhanger, but I kind of like the open-endedness of it, honestly. And the second and third books are, like, the second one leaves off on a huge cliffhanger, that then the third one, you know, starts right then. It's like, oh, he passed out, and then the third book he wakes up. It's like right back to back to back, you know, stories. So there's a little bit more time passes between this first one and the second book. So anyway, I would not necessarily pick up the second and third ones if they seem more contrived. You know, I don't know. I don't think the author had the idea for those stories in mind when he wrote this one, but I have a feeling he plotted those 2 stories together when he got ready to write the second one. So anyway, I would stop at this one. I gave this 5 stars. That is incredibly rare, and I highly recommend. So those are all the books that I read in the month of August. Did you guys read have you read any of these books before? What did you think? And yeah, let me know if I should continue on and ever try some of these authors again that I'm a little more hesitant about now. I might try N.K. Jemisin again. I might try her, what's it called? Like 1,000 Kingdoms series, or 100,000 Kingdoms. I've heard that that's pretty good. So I might give her one more shot. I might give Rainbow Rowell another shot and see what else that she's written. So I'll definitely try Barry Lyga again. I really enjoyed his writing. We know I'll never read anything else by Jennifer L. Armentrout again, though. We know there's that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.